I'm really excited about this episode because we're not only going to be talking about a topic for engaged couples, but this topic can also apply to those who are already married. So we have a exciting guest with us today. Her name is Karen Hanson. Thank you so much, Karen, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Sharon, Mike, I know this is going to be a little different from our other topics that we've done before, but we really want to dive in to the mindset and things that go on not only during planning, but as you start your new life together.
Well, our promise was that we would get people from down on one knee to down the aisle and even do some things to help them with their life after. So I'm really excited to have Karen on today and to help married couples kind of navigate the rough waters that can be the first couple of years of marriage.
I'm happy that you're here because I've been married. Actually, Tuesday, I'll be married 30 years. So hopefully I can learn
Wonderful.
something from
Yay.
you today to make this last 30 more.
Oh, wonderful.
Well, shout out to Mike and his wife Pam on this big anniversary milestone. So kudos
She's
to
a
you.
saint. She's an absolute saint.
I know. And Karen is not familiar. We just won't go off. That is a whole nother episode on itself. But Pam is a saint. Karen, but let's just dive right in. First of all, if you don't mind, will you take just a minute to introduce yourself to our audience and share a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Okay, so my name is Karen, and I am a licensed mental health counselor in Florida. And I work with couples, and I actually work with children from ages 6 to adults in their 80s. I love people, and my whole goal of doing all this is to be a guide and be a information spreader, like a bumblebee, from person to person, sharing on tips and working through processes, and then when things get tough, having those tough conversations and helping people have those tough conversations. But I just absolutely love what I do.
First, starting off, what would you recommend for keeping the married couples that are just getting married or have been married fresh? What do you recommend to keep them healthy with their relationships?
Well, one of the movies that was really popular, and I think it was the 80s, was the whole "You Complete Me" thing. Do you remember? Was that Jerry McGuire? Is that what the name of the movie
Jerry
was?
Maguire,
Okay.
yes.
Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, that one.
That would be
one.
starring Tom Cruise. Yes, Jerry
Yes.
Maguire.
Okay. Everything else was great about that movie, but that one line was something that was kind of concerning for me, because I think it's really important for people to understand that we have to be whole ourselves and really be healthy and really be secure in who we are. And then getting a married person, a couple, a partner into your life is just a bonus. And then you get to have a witness for your life. And then you get to have someone to share it with, instead of being too reliant or getting angry at them because you have expectations and they can't meet them. So really doing a lot of self-care and be very, very stable in what your values are. Why are you getting married? Is it because you want to have kids and then you find out they don't? Is it because you want to be married for 30 years and sit on the front porch when your person wants to travel? So it's really getting down to, what's the end in mind? When we're at the end of this journey that we're on together, are we at the same place? Obviously, we're going to grow as we go along, but you keep talking as you go along and make sure that those values are in line. I like to tell people at the beginning of any relationship that you don't go into it with, okay, 5, 6, 10, 20, 35 years down the line, we're going to break up. Everyone goes in with it like, this is my person. This is it. This is all I need to do. And so remember that feeling. Feel that feeling. Really secure that feeling inside. Write it down. Write down the whole list of things that are awesome about this person. I love the way that they smell. I love the laughter. I love their their funny way that they walk into a room and, or sleepwalk or whatever it is. Because if you don't keep that appreciation going, write it down in a notebook and keep adding to it. Because if you don't keep it going, you're going to find out when they come to me, 10 years later, sitting across from me, and I ask, what do you feel about the other person? I can't stand the way that they laugh. It drives me crazy. I can't even stand to hear their voice. Well, they've forgotten what they had fallen in love with.
Do you feel that when marriage or when a couple first gets married, do you think they should jump in and have kids? Or should they wait a while? So they, like, for example, when Pam and I got married, we didn't have our first child or our only child until we were married 10 years. And I felt like we
Mhm.
wanted to do a lot of things together, share things together for a long time before we even begin to build a family. Is that a good idea?
Yeah.
Is it a bad idea?
Right. It's a personal choice. And I'm really careful not to put my values on other people or what I did or did not do in my relationships, because it really is a personal where they're at. They may have been together since ninth grade. And so when they get married and they're in their 20s, they know this person, right? Um, so what's most important is that their values are in line. So how are you going to raise your children? How are you going to discipline them? How many children? Who's going to do most of the child care? What's going to happen if you both get a promotion at the same time? Who gets it? Where and you both have to move to the West Coast or the East Coast? Which way are you going to go? These are the what ifs that kind of come up, and you're never going to know what everything is. But to have a little bit of a agreement on, or an ability, not even just the agreement on, yeah, these are the kind of goals. I want to have 3 kids. You want to have 3 kids. Great. You end up with 2.5. You're fine. Um, if things if things come up along the way, it's learning those skills of the communication. So when people show up in my door, there's usually 2, 3 things that are the common things. It's that they've forgotten how to communicate, or they've never communicated, or they weren't so secure in their values that someone started to say, "Oh, whatever you want, dear. Where do you want to go to eat?" Well, wherever you want to go. And then they get in my office and they're like, "I hate Mexican food." Well, did you tell them? So learning how to be who you are and be in a relationship.
Sorry, Karen. I love how you just brought up food and that topic, and we were kind of laughing about it. But I hear that goes on a lot, even with me and my husband, but our friends, we joke around like, you don't even want to talk about going out to eat because nobody wants to make a decision. And
Right.
you've hit on that. And I think that affects a lot of couples.
Well, and there's little
Absolutely. And
tips.
when I tell my husband that I don't care, I really don't. I really do care.
Okay.
Ooh,
So
good
then
point.
so can I do a little bit with her for a second?
With
So
Sharon,
when you
go
say,
for
yeah,
it.
Oh,
Sharon,
sweet baby
Sharon, no,
Jesus.
you open the door, Sharon, but you can close it really quick if you want to.
Okay, I want to.
You want
She wants
you
to
want to
open the
close the
door.
door? Okay. You want to open the door?
No, go ahead. I'm just teasing.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do
All
it.
right. So say what you just said again.
When my husband asks me what I want for dinner and I say I don't care, I actually do care, because just like I don't like Mexican food. So you just made me think of us, because that happens a lot. And I'll say, I don't care, you can pick. And then he picks something, say Mexican, and I'll go, no, I don't want that. And then he says, well, you told me to pick. So it's a communication breakdown for sure.
Okay. So what goes on in your head right at the moment when it's going to be a decision time? There's a fork in the road. It's either going to be I choose, he chooses. What's the thought you have?
Gosh, I don't think that we do it all the time about dinner. care as long as he doesn't pick Mexican.
Okay. Okay. Is there a feeling that goes with that?
That he should know after being married this long that I don't like Mexican food.
Okay. Okay. How about, is there a belief? Is there a belief that goes behind that?
Not really, I don't think.
So a belief kind of like, listen, bleepity bleep bleep, you should really know me by now, is a belief.
Yes.
Let me take you through a really quick thing.
Yes.
So I'm going to do two things if you can give me the time to do that with you.
I'm just going to say real quick for our listeners that are tuning in, Karen's joining us from Florida. So we are using some software that allows us to do this remote recording. So if there's some times where there's pauses where that hasn't happened on our other episodes, it's because of this is how we're doing it. So Karen, you get the floor with Sharon. Me and Mike, we'll go make us a drink or something. And you have all the time that you want with Sharon.
You two are going to pay dearly for this.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, Karen, take it away.
Sharon, I promise this is going to be painless, okay? Because we're not going to dig really deep. I would never do that to someone. Okay. I just want to give you a quick little skill building, maybe a little knowledge and a little skill. So, okay. Our thoughts, our feelings, and our beliefs times our actions equals our outcome, no matter what. Think about that for just a quick second in life. What we think, what we feel, what we believe, and what we do gets us where we're at. So when you have a clear end in mind, a really, really clear end in mind, and in this situation is, I don't want any freaking Mexican food. I'm done with Mexican food. I don't want it anymore. I want to go to a different restaurant. Okay? So your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, forget about actions right now, but your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs need to get you there. Because you're either further away or you're closer to. So thought, I want to go out to eat. Feeling is, I'm hungry. Belief is, I get to choose where we go this time. Action is, instead when you say, where do you want to go to eat? You say, I want to go, blah, blah, blah. And now you're closer to your outcome of eating where you want to eat. Does that make sense? So all we have to do in any situation where it's conflicting with what you really want is to look at the end in mind and say what you really want, and then ask yourself, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I believing? Am I getting closer to or further away? And then pivot, change it just a little bit. So one skill. Second tool is a rating scale. So Sharon, where do you want to eat today?
A steakhouse.
On a scale to 1 to 10, how important is that to you today?
7.
7? Okay. I'd like Chinese today, but it's really only a 3 because I had it last night too. So why don't we go ahead and do your steak tonight? And then all of a sudden, we might both have different choices, but in every one of our choices, there's a how much does it matter? Like tomorrow night, I may really, really, really just want to go out for a chocolate cake for dinner. So what Michael asked before is, what are some of the things that new couples can do? Well, they can at the very, very, very beginning decide, okay, when we get to a decision where there's a cross in the road and we don't really know which way to go here, let's rate it, how important it is. Now, one person cannot always say, it's a 9, and the other person can't always say it's a 2, because that's not honest. We need to be authentic and honest with each other and ourselves on what we really want.
I'm going to be honest with you, Karen. I just took notes. And this is something that goes on between me and my husband. And me and Sharon have actually talked about this before because her and Ron are the same way. Her husband's name's Ron. And it can escalate into other things, like the simplest small thing over food. And I'm sure other people out there deal with this. But what you just, I did write this down, but I really love the scale thing because you can find some common ground.
It takes it out of the emotion, the heat of the emotion. Because, at supper time, we've already had a very long day. We've already had some disappointments. We've already had some moments where, you want to throw the computer out the window or whatever it happened. And now you got to go home. to the person you love, by the way, but you also feel very, very safe with. So then all that mask stuff comes off. And if you've been crabby since 8 to 5 and now it's 6 o'clock and you're hungry, oh, ho, 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 gloves are off, right? You're ready to just, don't stand between me
Exactly.
and my supper.
Sharon, what's going through my mind is right now is please, sweet baby Jesus, don't let Ron and Josh hear this episode. Mike is going to tell on us. He's
Yeah,
going to
he's
say,
gonna
you
tell
all
'em."
need to listen to this episode. You are mentioned in it. But Karen, a couple things. I know, Mike, you were writing some stuff down. Sharon, though, on an all seriousness, thank you for being willing to share that with Karen, though,
Yes,
honestly,
thank you.
because, that
Thank
was
you.
They both know they owe me now.
okay. But you did take one for the team. So thank you, Sharon. One of the
Mike's
things
gonna
that
offer to take me out for Mexican food.
Exactly.
can I ask you one thing? You mentioned two things that I know we're going to want to mention or talk about. You brought up
Okay.
self-care and skills.
Mhm.
One of the things that I'd like to mention, skills. Unfortunately, in school, you're not always given all the tools, for life skills. And I think that basic communication, I don't even know if they still offer some of the business classes that they did, when I was in school, specifically high school. A lot of times, these younger engaged couples, they haven't crafted those skills or maybe even encountered something where they had to use those skills. Do you have any tips or anything? Because I think we come back to the center thing of communication. Do you have any tips for people out there as far as getting those skills or working on them?
Sure. And actually, we have been learning those skills since the day that we started talking, because we've had two or one or a bunch of people modeling for us how to communicate our whole lives. We have watched whether it's been good or maybe not so good, whether escalation gets to violence or whether it's, people laugh it off. So we've been watching people communicate our whole lives. So it's important to bring that up, because if you imagine you have an invisible backpack on your back, and as we go through life, we keep shoving stuff in that backpack. Well, communication's one of those things. How did we observe people's communication styles? And then you can actually, and it goes back to what I was doing with Sharon, if your outcome is, I don't want to communicate the way that my parents did, I want to communicate lovingly or openly or whatever the outcome is, then it goes back to, are your thoughts in line with that? Are your feelings in line with that? And are your beliefs? And in this particular one, beliefs is the more important one. Because if you have the belief that women shouldn't make decisions because that's how it was in your household, if you have the belief that if I say what I want to say, then it's going to start a fight. If I don't give in, it's going to start a fight. Well, guess what? People who fight usually stay together because they're communicating. It's the people who throw those stuff into the backpack and hold it inside that eventually one day the husband or wife comes home and says, hey, I noticed that we didn't take the garbage can in. And all of a sudden, all heck breaks loose. And the roof comes off the house. And you're wondering what just happened. It's because someone was pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing down until they hit their point and it couldn't be pushed down anymore and it just exploded. And that's what happens if you don't keep having those difficult conversations. That's where the growth comes. So it's when you've hurt my feelings, when you cut me off in the middle of a conversation. And that is something that I grew up with in my household, of never feeling like I was being heard. And so when you do that consistently, that's an open sore that keeps getting reopened. But you don't know that. about me. I probably don't even know that about me until I finally figure out, oh, that's what's going on. That's the belief. So then you're able to say, you know what, honey? I feel like you're not listening to me and I'm not of value when you cut me off in the sentence. That's using an I statement. So that is the skill. I feel when whatever it is happens. And then the other person's role, and this is the agreement you have at the beginning. It's just like a business agreement. You have agreements on how things are going to be happen, do what you're going to do. So the agreement is, I'm going to keep listening to you until you feel heard. And when you feel heard, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to paraphrase it for you, honey, I heard you say that when I cut you off, you feel like you're not important. Did you feel heard? And the other person says yes or no. And until they say yes, the person keeps doing it with the whole goal of actually hearing what the person was saying. That's my two skills.
Well, I want to
Did that
say
make
something.
sense?
Yes, it made sense a lot. What
Mhm.
I want to say is, like I said earlier, we've been married 30 years this week. And when Pam and I got married, and I remember this like it was yesterday. When we got married, the minister was up there and said his vows. And the one thing he told us, he says, promise me this every night before you go to bed, always say good night. And if you have a problem that happened during the day or you had an argument, don't go to bed mad. Wake
Mhm.
up the next morning, start fresh and start all over. I have, and Pam can confess to this too. We deal with that a lot, which our
Mhm.
situation is a little different because we started dating when we were freshmen in high school, and we work together every day. We go to work. We don't drive to work together every day, but she's in the car in front of me or I'm in the car behind her. And so we come home and, especially working with these two girls here, Christina and Sharon, that gives us a little time away from each other. And Pam does her own thing. But we both always remember that never go to bed mad, because that is a big no-no. And I feel like after 30 years, that's
Right.
really helped us.
Right. Because there's actually a brain component to that. So when we go to sleep, we kind of chew on everything that's been going on throughout the day. And so when you go to bed mad, you have just given a steak and potato dinner to your brain to be chomping on all night long. And so when you wake up, that brain is like, it's already, it's fueled with all that stuff it's been doing for the last 8 hours. So you've taken a small problem that was this big and you've now made it this big. And then if you go to work and then you think about it all day and, oh, that blankety blank person doesn't blah, 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 whatever it is. Now you've made this little problem this big. And then you get home and the trash can's not out and the kids aren't fed and the dog peed on the floor and whatever is going on. Now we have taken a problem that could have been solved in 15 minutes with a difficult conversation and have made it into, I'm not talking to you for 3 freaking days. Forget it. And any intimacy, off the table. You do that 5, 10, if you make it that far, years. What's the quality of your relationship? Is it closer to your outcome or further away?
Well, I do believe too what you said, that it's good to, a lot of people say people don't fight, but I mean, I really do think it's good to have a good fight every now and then. So it just blows it all out and gets it all out in the open, and then you move on.
Well, and it's fighting fair. That's the key. So if you're fighting and you start tearing at, remember that list I talked about? The things that you really like, and then 5, 10, 15 years later, the things that aren't on, if you start taking those things that you really, really valued about that person, and now you've flipped it around, and that person still thinks you love them because of this, and now you've switched it, you've created even a bigger problem because now that other person's equilibrium's off. What? I don't know who I am now in this relationship, and I don't know where you are, and then do you even love me? And you're just fighting about the milk, and now we're into this, do you love me, and all that kind of thing. Go ahead.
Something that comes up a lot with my husband and I is he calls it opening the archives, because I do kind of tend to carry a backpack, And so when I get upset about
Surprise.
something, when I get upset about something that's happening currently, I'll bring up something that happened 3 years ago. And he
Mhm.
always says there
Mhm.
should be like a 3-month limit on what you're allowed to bring up when you have an argument. And
Sour
he'll
milk.
say, there you
Yep, the
go,
sour
opening the
milk.
archives again. Yeah.
Mhm.
Opening the
Yeah.
archives again and pulling out, everything I've ever done that made you mad. And I really have been working on that a lot because I know it's something that really bothers him. But,
Yeah. Well,
that's just, I think, too, knowing what buttons you're pushing is important.
and it all goes back to those beliefs. So you're really not pulling the facts out of that backpack. You're pulling what you believe about those facts. And
Hmm.
if you, I bet if you were to look over the things that you pull out, there's a common theme about them. And those common themes are tied into your values and your beliefs. And when they get trampled over, then they get a special spot, in those backpacks where they have the like inner zipper. They get to be put in that inner zipper and really
Right.
protected and pulled out only when you
Right.
need to, right? So it's your job, not his,
Right.
to look at those and say, if I keep holding on to this, am I getting closer or further away from what I really want? Do you really want to end a nice weekend with a fight on Sunday afternoon and then start pulling up, 180 Sunday afternoons? Probably not. The last question to ask yourself is it worth it? Is it worth it to make the change? Because if it is, you're going to do it. If it's not worth it, you're going to keep doing your same habits.
With that being said, Karen, I mean, I know here locally at my Pacific church that we go to, and a lot of Catholic churches in our area, they recommend that the bride and groom goes through I don't want to say a counseling, but I mean, it's some kind of
Mhm.
course that you have to go
It is
through
counseling.
like 2 or 3 months before the ceremony. And if you don't complete that, they will not marry you. Do you recommend brides and grooms having counseling before they get married?
Well, again, it goes back to I don't know what they're teaching. So if they're teaching them how to not fight fair, then no, I wouldn't recommend it. But if they are teaching them the skills that are healthy, yeah, absolutely. I think my grandmother told me when she was dying. I asked her what the secret of life was. And she said, "Come back tomorrow and I'll tell you." And I came back and she said, "Learn something new every day." I was 19. I thought she just wanted me to stay in college.
Love
Took
that.
me a few years. Took me a few years to figure out, you know what? Dang it, she's right. We can learn something new every day. So if you are 19, 20, 25, 26, 36, on your 30th anniversary, you can still learn something new about yourself. You can still learn something new about your partner, and you can still learn something new about your relationship.
Love that.
I'm just sitting here like taking all this in, and you know, we've been here for a few years. We've been on this earth, all of us, for a few years. And I think back to where I was, when I was 20. And goodness, I did not have many skills. I probably had more than most people, but I still had no idea in regards to relationships and, truly being there for each other no matter what was going on. And that's why I wanted, and I'm glad Mike asked that question about the counseling or classes or whatever, because as you've said, no matter what age they're entering in this, it's still two people coming together into a relationship. So I was really curious your take on that. If you recommended they talk to someone or take some skill building or whatever those classes are even called.
Yeah, I think so. I think that if that is if that's let me rephrase that. If that's how they're going to learn it, if they're going to there's there's a difference between learning and knowing. So if you go to a class, you learn the information, you fill out whatever checklist quiz or to pass, get your piece of paper and go. No, they didn't learn anything. They didn't, I mean, they learned something, they didn't integrate it. They didn't make those changes. But if they go to someone who can get to those beliefs and those values and get to those, where are the gaps, and awareness building and all that kind of thing, where they can actually really take it in and it means something to them, that's where it's going to be the more powerful. But you know what? We don't learn from words. We learn through experience. So they're going to have to practice it, and they're going to, we all stumble and fall in our relationships. That's how we learn. Regardless of whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship or a mother-daughter or son-father, we learn from those. Where you end and where I pick up. What you believe might not be what I totally believe. And especially as you get older, you see that divide happening within families. That's okay. They're just deciding who they are. And in every moment, we are deciding who we are.
Karen, I know we talk a lot in the wedding business about trends, wedding trends and things that we see changing over the years. But in your business, are there relationship trends? What do you see kind of in the years you've been in practice? What changes in marriage relationships are you seeing?
One of the major things that I've seen is the waiting to have children. That a lot of the younger couples coming in are waiting until the late 30s, even into their 40s to have their first child. My mother had me when she was 42, a long time ago, and my sisters are 12 and 15 years older than me, so yes, I was a welcome surprise. Not a mistake, a welcome surprise. So, but that wasn't like that a while ago. Now it is. And actually, what younger couples are doing is they're having pets, dogs, before they have children. And I'm all for that. One, because I'm a dog lover anyway, but two, because you're actually practicing. You're practicing the who's going to get up to let the puppy out at 3 o'clock in the morning. Who's going to clean up the poop, morning feed, diaper changing, having those difficult conversations, being able to say, I feel like I'm doing all the work. I need you to.
We had a dog when we were first married, and we had it for 10 years before we had our son. And we were actually scared to bring our son home because we didn't know how Scooter, that was our dog at the time, would react to Ryan. And I tell you what, he really comforted him. I mean, he was right there to make sure nobody hurt him and everything. It was totally opposite than what we thought. So we were so attached to our dog, we didn't know, oh gosh, we're bringing the stranger into the house. How's the dog going to act? But that's funny you mentioned the pet thing.
I was shaking my head because we are doing the puppy thing right now. And it was just the news was just broke to me a couple months ago at the vet's office that the puppy experience goes till about 2.5 years. And I was like, yeah, I don't remember that from years ago when I had a puppy because we've rescued quite a few. And our last dog, Rubble, he was 3 when we adopted him. And then we didn't know how Rubble was going to take to a puppy. And it has been an experience. My brother and sister-in-law tell me all the time it's just like having a newborn. And we love it, but there are times that it does get overwhelming. But there's no better sound. I'm sure we don't have kids. I'm sure there's no better sound than feet on the floor. There's no better sound than the paws coming across our floor. Our puppy isn't here today because he actually got neutered, and it has felt like a big missing, like, oh, well, he needs to go out so many times. It's not like the adult dog. Oh, did I make sure he ate his food because I switched his bowls out and he really is scared of the other bowl? And it's like, wait, we're missing on doing something today. Like, it's not the exact same. And I'm sure I'm making it sound like pets are very similar to kids. And I know that's not the exact way it is. But I love how you talked about their learning by the trend being people getting a dog or a pet and learning that responsibility and what all's involved and how you've got to work together as a team. I think that was great that you mentioned that. Sharon, I think you were going to say something.
I was just going to ask her, this is fascinating to me. What other trends are you seeing in relationship land?
So, you asked that, and I've been kind of racking my brain a little bit. And the funny thing is I don't see a lot of new couples. And why don't I see a lot of new couples? Because they're in love. They're excited about their relationship, and they haven't hit some of those pain points yet. So I'm not sure what other trends. Younger couples, I can tell you, older couples are feeling the crunch between taking care of older adults and having children. So they're kind of called the sandwich um, age, I guess, generation, and that adds stress to a relationship. Um, with COVID, with the uncertainty of a lot of different things about jobs, that's increased people's anxiety. And the interesting thing about anxiety is that anxiety and depression are best friends, and they hang out together. So you can ebb and flow between the two. And when you add a mental illness, and I don't say that lightly because we get physical illnesses and we have some mental illnesses. It's not the big ones that people think of. We have times in our lives where we ebb and flow. And if we have a partner that understands that, you can ebb and flow with it. And, I told you that whole, I don't like this phrase, you complete me, because if I'm ebbing and flowing and you're ebbing and flowing, who's completing who and which way are you going? I need to be my whole, right? And in a relationship, it is very, very rarely 50-50. Think about that. It's not 50-50. It's not 50-50 every day because our energy levels are different. So remember that experience, that example I said earlier. You come home, you've already had a rough day, the garbage is out, you come home and you blow up or you just go to bed or whatever it is. Are you at 50% or higher? No, you're probably right around 20%, right? Your other half needs to pick up the 80 if you're at a 20. And then maybe later the next week, it flips. That's how you keep a stable home for your family, for your dogs or your kids. My dog, anytime we had an argument, would run outside. He was so sensitive to just the sound. He actually helped us learn to fight fair, right? Ebb and flow, ebb and flow. Now, it's not fair if someone's always, just like the scale, it's not fair if someone's always at a 9, or it's not fair if they're always at a 20. Then you have an imbalance in the relationship, and somehow you got to find it. So if it's like a plane, it's very rarely a straight shot. The tailwinds, the whatever. I'm not a pilot, so I might not even be saying this right, but if you have a range that you can stay in, 40, 60, that kind of range, great. If you're constantly like this, you're going to have some tough times ahead of you. Figure it out. Go
I
ahead.
think the information you've given our listeners today has been great. The one thing that, and I probably shouldn't even mention this, but I'm going to because it's so important, especially talking to you today. Um, sometimes I've been doing this for almost 33 years now and been doing weddings almost, third of my life. But, sometimes I think the bride or the couple gets hooked up on their wedding day. And only reason I'm mentioning this is because
Absolutely.
we're talking to you today. And, sometimes I feel like the love is not always there because I'll be honest with you, and I probably should not be talking about this on our podcast because that's a totally another episode. But I mean, you would not believe how many brides I have done their weddings twice or three times. Believe that or not. I love it. But
Mhm.
sometimes I think they're so young and they don't realize what the word love means, that they really need to stop and
Mhm.
think about. And if they're in a situation right now that you're planning a wedding, but are you marrying the love of your life? It's not just about that one day and having a party and being the bride, being the princess walking down the aisle.
Right.
I mean, there's so
Right.
much more to it than just that day. And I think your information that you've given us today, I think that should, help them learn and what to do and what's to come in
Mhm.
the years to come.
Well, a lot of times it goes back to what we were talking about with that outcome. Is the outcome the perfect dream wedding? Or is the outcome the perfect dream marriage? Is the outcome
Exactly.
the perfect relationship or just the time to be on stage? And that's where really doing that soul work and those classes that you mentioned and really looking, talking to
Mhm.
someone and figure out, what is my outcome? What is my dream? Because that's going to lead everything else. That's going to lead everything else.
I will share something quickly with you all since we're all being so open here in this episode today. I'm married at a younger age. And gosh, looking back on it, for the both of us, we were married for 3 years. And I believe it was right after my 21st birthday, I believe. Probably should know that a little bit better. But anyhow, so I did the whole church wedding. I did all the bells and whistles. As a matter of fact, Mike, the class that you mentioned, oh, yeah, we took that, signed off on our paper, and there we went down the aisle, red roses in hand. And there is a picture of me with my parents on each side of me right before I walked down the aisle. And I remember that picture vividly. It was all right there. What was I doing? I was there, and thank goodness was very fortunate to separate on good
Nicely.
terms. Um, yes, we were both young, and what I learned from that is, you know, we had so much growing still to do, and it I think along the way, it helped me in with my marriage with Josh, um, who has never been married before, but I highly respect him because I was coming out of a relationship, when we ran into each other. We went to school together, never dated, played sports, so forth and so on, and ran into him. And he steered clear. Like, he would return phone calls and we would talk, no dating. I was like, what in the world is going on? And, come to find out, he said, you know, I didn't want to be that rebound person. Like, I wanted to know that you wanted to go out with me because you wanted to go out with me, not because this whole mess had just went on. And that I highly respect day in and day out, because I think that was a pivotal point for our relationship to be where it's at. And Mike, I'm so glad that you brought that up because in my eyes, I was getting to the age when I first got married. That's what you did. You went to high school, you went to college, you got married, and then there you went. But it doesn't have to be like that for everyone. And I think Karen has even shined a light on some of that. So it's amazing how you can look back on life experiences and how much you've grown, what you learned from it. Those Karen mentioned it. You live it, you learn from it, and I took a lot away from that. And I wouldn't change anything, to be honest with you, because I'm so happy where I'm at. And I think a lot of times people get maybe hung up on that they worry about what about this and what about that. And, Karen said at the very
Well,
beginning when she started, you've got to be happy your whole self. You can't look for someone else to fill that. Gosh, I think that's such a powerful statement. I really do.
I do too.
right. And I love that you brought up that you learned. you learned from it, because that goes back to we learn something new every day too, right? And if we have an experience that doesn't go the way that we would have liked it to have gone, it's only a mistake if you didn't learn from it, if you didn't take anything from it. If you took something from it, then it's a lesson and you move on. When we think of things as mistakes, that goes in that backpack and that just makes you heavier and heavier and heavier. But when you learn from it, then you get to
I think
have that
sometimes
next
too,
great relationship.
And Sharon,
I
I know you're getting
So,
ready to say something, but Karen, I'm so glad you highlighted that because it wasn't right away that I learned from it. It took me just a little while because I feel like I was so young at the time. But it was something that I didn't carry around with me all the time. Things that went through my mind was disappointing the people that came and shared that day with me. But
mhm.
when you have that communication, we didn't always have it in that, and I didn't have it in that first marriage, but as it was coming to an end, I think that's what allowed us to kind of part ways the way that it ended up being so easy. I hate to say so easy, but easier than probably expected was because he sat down for 3 or 4 hours and talked through this, and we have our whole life ahead of us. It's not together. That's not how it's gonna be, and I did learn from it, but it didn't happen right then. It really did take a couple years for me to really take away from that relationship, and I've taken over the years I have. So Sharon, go ahead.
I just was loving what she said, and I wanted to acknowledge that I am also on my second marriage and was married very young, had my first child at 20. Um, and who you are at 30 is not who you are at 20. Um, but I think since we're being so open, like you said, a big step for me was accepting, giving myself, you know, for mistakes made. Because until you accept who you are and you forgive yourself, for mistakes made, I don't think you can go into another relationship and be healthy. I was single for 15 years, went to a counselor every single Wednesday at 2:30 for 2 years just to get, my divorce was not an easy process. So just to process what had happened and try to learn who I was, because I had been someone's wife and someone's mom, my whole adult life. So I think bringing that whole healed person into a new relationship is so important. And I love that she said that, because I know if I had gotten into another marriage before I did the hard work, it would have been a disaster. And I'm really thankful, for time spent learning who I was.
Absolutely. Good
Amen
job
to
for
that,
you.
Sharon. Amen to that.
I do this a
This was
lot in my counseling. So can you read
ah,
it? It says,
Yay,
"Yay,
you.
you."
I love it. I
Yay,
do. I
you.
can. Yeah.
you know what, Mike, who would have thought that this would be the ring the bling and all the things open session where here
I
we
know.
go, we're
I
an
feel like
open
I've
book.
been I feel like
I
I've
think
been to
we've all
therapy
three been
tonight.
through counseling.
You know what? You know what though? One of the things that this might show people is it's okay to be open. It's okay to be vulnerable. And
Exactly.
you know what? It's okay if you need to go and speak to a counselor or ask for help. Hey, it's okay. I went to counseling. I went to counseling when I was a teenager, I believe. I went to counseling after my first marriage. I'm here to tell you the ring the bling is a judgment free zone. And for anyone out there listening, it is okay to ask for help. And I know you all probably all agree.
I think counseling should be mandatory. I have said that since I was 30 years old. I think that every single young adult, I think it should be like offered in school. I don't know, but I think it should be mandatory that everybody gets an opportunity to sit down with someone and just understand themselves. And I think that we would all be better off if everyone had that opportunity.
Mike, I didn't know if you were getting ready to
So
say something, but Karen, I know we've had you on here for quite a while, but one of the things I would like to ask you in closing, and you don't have to go into big depths of this, but I don't want to go without mentioning something about COVID. We're still dealing with that right now as we discuss this episode. And is there any one tip that you could maybe share with people, whether they're engaged, married, doesn't matter if they're listening to this podcast? It's been rough on everyone, no matter what your circumstances are. It has played some kind of role in your mental health. Is there anything you would recommend to people, no matter where they're at, as far as that goes?
I would say that the most important thing is to have a really strong belief that this is going to work its way out, that we're not going to be in this forever. Because when you don't have hope, you don't have anything to look forward to. So we're in the winter, we're in a winter storm, and we need to take care of ourselves and do all the things we can right now, but we can look forward to that there's going to be a spring.
Perfect.
Love it.
Wow.
And
thank you, Karen.
Go ahead.
That's awesome.
I was just going to say it's been a pleasure having you here, and I mean I think Sharon and Christina both we've all learned something, and I think we've took this to another level that we really wasn't expecting to take it to, but I think that's perfect for our listeners. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much too. I guess my final thought is if you can focus on the now and really enjoy and love and care right now, and then have an endless amount of nows, it's going to work out. It's going to be a great journey. So I thank you all for allowing me to come on. Thank you for opening up and being honest and authentic, because that's really important in life as well. So thank you.
Karen, are people able to connect with you as far as if you're local or something like that? Is there ways that they can reach out or anything like that?
So I am licensed only in Florida. So I can only take clients in Florida, but I'm not the only game in town. There are so many different counselors in any area. My advice to anybody is when you find a counselor, it's like finding a pair of shoes. You got to find one that fits, that's the right style, right size, that can go the mile with you. And if they get old and stinky, you go find a new pair. The most important part is that you go buy the shoes. Okay?
That's all.
I just was going to say thank you. I think that she's given some wonderful advice, and I just got my bubble burst because I was going to call her and make a Zoom appointment because I got a lot out of this. But anyway, just on behalf of Mike and Christina, and our listeners, I want to thank you so much for sharing your experience and your expertise. It was our honor to have you on.
Thank you. I so appreciated it. Loved spending. I told you at the beginning, it's what I love to do. And I appreciate your courage to be open. Keep doing that.
Thank you.
Karen, thank you so much to the time that you've came on here and shared with our listeners. We greatly appreciate it. I echo everything Mike and Sharon have said. So we greatly appreciate it. So for all of our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in to this episode. For any of our other episodes, if you want to write a review, if you want to subscribe, go to our website, theringthebling.allthethings.com. And again, thank you to our guest, Karen Hanson. Thank you. What you have given our audience, I think they will be able to take away from for a long time to come. So until next time, everyone, Karen. Stay safe.
This episode of The Ring, The Bling, and All the Things was brought to you by The Wedding Experts, whose mission is to connect engaged couples easily and efficiently to local wedding experts. Visit theweddingexperts.love to connect with your local wedding vendors, as well as access valuable resources to help you plan all the details for your big day. If you are a wedding professional, there are affordable and effective advertising opportunities available to you by visiting theweddingexperts.love/advertise.